Hey, it's Alan here.
And Bre.
And we are
the hunter and the hippie.
Connected through yoga and bonded by our love of the wild places and the love for outdoors, we've come together to share our conversations about life.
Well, maybe more so what we've learned or are continuing to learn about life.
And there's no one way to do it. Life, that is.
And hopefully provide you with some teeny tiny bits of inspiration to connect deeper with yourself, others, and our great Mother Earth.
All right. Enough already about the podcast. Let's just get to the podcast. Hey, Bre.
What's going on?
Just getting back from a 10-day trip.
Yeah.
Got to see some family, got to do a bunch of work, and literally just rolled in and I took the dog for a walk before I jumped on here with you. But
nice.
I'm feeling good. You don't realize how much you have your comforts and just like the little things.
Mm-hmm.
And so let me address two things before we get into it, right? This is totally like off topic of what we're going to be talking about today, but I'm thinking about it. So let me address it. Who the fuck still has down pillows? Please tell me you don't have a down pillow.
I have a down pillow.
Do you really?
And have down comforter.
The comforter is different, but the pillow, like every hotel I sleep in, they have down pillows.
Yeah.
And they go flat so fucking quick. And like my neck is killing me from like 8 days of down pillows. So
I have 4 pillows on my bed though. And the down is so I can actually fold it and adjust it. And then I have my more like firm, like my non-down on top of it. So it's like my adjust so that my like.
See, you have a non-down pillow because the down flattens out.
Oh yeah. But the down is like, I like that it's moldable because you can like adjust the height. Whereas like just the synthetic thing is just this like, unless you have like the body foam one.
Totally makes sense. So I have the My Pillow, which I love.
Okay.
And I actually got a travel one, and I take it hunting and camping with me. It's like this big, and it rolls up. And that's my one like luxury item that I take hunting and camping.
Nice.
Because I can't sleep on like air pillows. I've tried those. Those things are awful. All right. So the second thing is 1-ply toilet paper. Hotels should be required, like by law, to put on their website, like, you're about to book this hotel. We carry 1-ply toilet paper.
Leave it in the review.
Right. Like, do you still want to book this? No, I absolutely don't. No.
You should put it in like hotels.com review. Be like, great experience, but would not book again because 1-ply.
Like it's absurd that 1-ply toilet paper still exists. We are in the 21st century. Like, what are we, Neanderthals? Like, we should
just have bidets and everything.
We really should. I don't even use 1-ply toilet paper when I'm hunting.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it is like you roll out some and you're like, okay, well, that clearly isn't enough. And like, you just pretty much make your own 2-ply.
Right. Mm-hmm. I think once I accidentally got it because I was like going for the cheaper.
Yep.
And I didn't, and I was like, what? No, don't go cheaper on toilet paper.
No, never. You never go cheaper. But then then you can go too expensive on toilet because like they get like these like really nice like plush toilet papers, but then it like falls apart because it's like so soft.
Yeah.
Agreed though, 100%. Everyone should just have bidets.
Yeah.
The French got it right.
I know.
Right. This is gross.
All of Europe. I feel like most of Europe is
true.
A lot of Europe is.
This is gross, but I have a friend who would shower anytime after he would go poo.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's disgusting. He's like, would you rub shit on your wall and then just take a dry piece of paper and wipe it off? He's like, no, like you'd get it wet and like you'd actually clean it. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, this is what I was talking to Andy about it, and I said, when you bring your vegetable, well, I don't really wash my vegetables. Okay. Anyway, that's a different story. But for most people who wash their vegetables, Like when you bring your vegetables home, you don't get a paper towel and rub the dirt off of them.
Right. You run them underwater.
You put it underwater,
and some people even use like soap or like they have like vegetable wash, or like they have the brush, right?
Yeah. So it's like that's the same thing. Like
100%.
Why are we using like a dry
right? It's gross.
Piece of paper.
It is so gross.
Clean ourselves.
Anyway, now that we've talked about our bathroom habits, you want to start us off with some breathing before we get into it today?
Yeah, I can do that.
Let's do it.
I haven't even thought about it.
I could use some breath. I sat in the car for 7.5 hours, so altogether my driving was over like 39 plus hours in the car.
Dang.
Yeah. In the last 10 days. So I drove like 2,500 miles.
Yeah. Sounds like me a few weeks ago.
Yes.
All the time in the car because weather, but it's like, oh, it's rough on the body. I don't envy people with desk jobs when I have those long car rides because I can relate. I feel like I've said that before, but
my desk job, I have a standing desk. I have a really good like ergo chair.
Yeah.
I have a kneeling chair.
Yeah.
And then I have a ball, the big bouncy balls. So like I am constantly switching. Like I'm going from standing to like seated to kneeling. Yeah, I highly recommend switching your positions often if you have a desk job. We are not meant to sit in the shape of an L for eons.
Yeah. All right. So wherever you are, you're already breathing. Wherever you are, there you are. Actually, I'm going to do this week. I've been with yoga and nidras and writing. Have been inspired by Thich Nhat Hanh, who passed away on Saturday at age 95.
Shout out No Mud, No Lotus. I already talked about the book, but fantastic book. And I'm not happy he passed away, but I'm happy that he graced us with his presence. So
yeah,
don't be sad for the loss. Be happy he lived.
Yeah, and all that he shared. And I think with that, I kind of spent this week going back listening to some of his lectures or like talks and reading some of his book. And so I would like to do a breathing in relationship to that. But before, I would say a little like preface is one of his talks about loneliness. He addresses how we're in like modern times, we're more connected than ever with technology and social media, yet we are lonelier than ever. And he attributes that to a loss of connection to ourselves and says that taking mindful breaths, taking a time daily for mindful breaths is a way to connect back with ourself. And ourself is home, and so and he, like all gurus, he has a great sense of humor. And so he says, you connect back with home, and home's a mess. Well, what do you expect? You haven't been home. You've lost yourself. And so we are going to do a little bit of breath in relation to just a coming home. So whether you can close your eyes or not, even if you can't have a soft gaze, just simply bring awareness into your breath. So starting to notice just how your breath is flowing in the moment. You might notice if it's deep or shallow, if there's differences between your inhales or exhales. You might notice where in your body you're breathing. Is it in the belly or just the chest? Is it sporadic or consistent? Is there a texture to it? And then as you observe the breath, expand your awareness into the entire body. Just noticing the quality of your body right now. How does it feel? What are the sensations? Is your home a mess? Is it locked up? Is it expressive, relaxed? Does it feel peaceful? And however home feels right now, however your body feels right now, I invite you to smile at it. And the next few breaths will be guiding through just a simple phrase. On the in-breath, you'll silently say, I am home. Out breath, I smile at home. In breath, I am home. Out breath, smile at home. And just taking a few more breaths, again, repeating these phrases. And beginning to cultivate a sense of just allowing. However home is right now, being able to smile at it just the way it is. And then when you feel ready, if your eyes are closed, you can slowly flutter them open. We're back.
We're back.
How's your home?
A fucking mess.
So yeah, I would recommend, maybe we'll link that video in the show notes. You know, and I love that he does that. And I think, gosh, what's the book that I have? You Are Here. And you know, it's like you can take he does this, he'll say one thing and then he'll say smile at whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just really like acknowledging every aspect of the present moment, even like physical pieces of your body, right? And it's so simple, but yeah. Simple
but difficult.
Right? I mean, people just to take time to breathe.
Yeah.
And gosh, what do they say? I think at the Plum Village where he resided, they would have a bell go off. I don't know how often, that prompted them to stop, get out from their computer, and like take a few mindful breaths. And I know you can't, like, people we've talked about before, like scheduling it in, and if you can't do it every hour, if you can't sit for 5 minutes, like, wake up, take 3 mindful breaths. Before you go to work, take 3 mindful breaths. When you get done with work, 3 mindful breaths. When you go to bed, 3 mindful breaths. Like, if you don't have time for that, you gotta take a good look at your priorities.
Right. And I even challenge that, right? And I'm not saying that that I do this, and I think it's something that I'll start working on as well. But I think we need to challenge ourselves in the sense of what is our priority, and taking 5 minutes, taking 3 minutes out of every hour to breathe, taking 3%, right? Of I don't think it's 3%. Because 60 minutes, don't ask me to do math. I'm not the math guy. Clearly, it's not 100 minutes, so it's clearly more than 3%. But right, but 3 minutes of the hour, just to be mindful, be in the moment, right? Breathe. There's no reason we can't do it, right? It's even when the kids are screaming and and you're just getting out of a meeting and you have another meeting coming up, and just taking that moment to be there, be mindful of it. And it's not about changing anything, or it's just about being in that moment, right? Like I'm anxious, yes, yep, sure am. I'm fearful, I'm whatever it is, I'm happy. Just being in the moment and acknowledging your state of being.
I know we've talked about, it's like, it's not about getting rid of the thoughts. You might, through meditation, find that stillness, find that silence, or experience it. But, and this is what he talks about in that lecture, is it's to connect with yourself. To connect with, to actually notice your thoughts, to actually notice your feelings, your perceptions, your emotions, because so often they are running our life. And we don't even realize it because we're so disconnected from ourselves.
Yeah. And I'll say this, and I think we can use it as a segue into what we want to talk about today, is that we often don't get it right. Right? And we and I'm talking about everything, right? We often don't get it right with ourselves and with others, and it's not about necessarily right or wrong, right? It can be right or wrong, but it doesn't have to be bad or good. And when we don't get it right, it's acknowledging that, yeah, you know what, we fucked up, we didn't get it right that time, and here's how we're going to make it better. And and I'll segue it into our topic, I believe, is, right, like last episode, we talked about some heavy stuff that I don't think, and right, like you brought this up before we started recording, and I'll let you share your thoughts on it. But, after you brought it up, I shared that after listening to the episode and doing the little bit of editing that we do, the show notes, I didn't get it right. I feel like I totally just brushed off your trauma, your sexual assault, and sort of didn't probe. And I feel like I wasn't, the friend that I should have been. And we're on here to share, right? We have mics, and we say it often that we're sharing from our perspective, and I think we missed the mark on that from my end, and I believe you feel the same. And I'll just turn it over to you, let you share.
Yeah, I think what I said is we really just, I guess, grazed over it, and maybe I think one piece is like we went back to talking about Yoga Alliance or yoga, right? And the direction, because that's what we were going to be talking about, and direction wasn't going that way. And I think we did a disservice not just touching on some points there. I believe I mentioned, and maybe I didn't, I don't remember, like part of the healing layer for me is being able to say something about it, to speak up. And
you did say that. You talked about how you've been silent for a while, and you thought that was part of the healing, but it wasn't, and that actually talking about it is what helped you.
Yeah, well, and it's, I never, the being silent wasn't I never thought that was part of my healing, but that was my that's a pre-programmed pattern, or we all have different mechanisms for dealing with stuff. Mm-hmm. I tend towards the lock it up, no emotion, and the other part is I'll just power through by myself. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's a piece of not wanting to burden someone else, not wanting. I know a big part, and this is what I wanted to touch on, was part of me not talking about it was it's not who I am, and it doesn't define me, and I never ever wanted to or believe that I am a victim. Mm-hmm. So if you talk about it, then you're in my head, right? Then I'm this victim, and that's not who I am. And this experience does not define me. So why do I need to talk about it? But how it was controlling me was because I didn't talk about it. Yeah. Right. So what we talk about or what we attach to it is controlling you just as much as what you're avoiding. And I think that's very important because we can rationalize certain behaviors that don't serve us long term, that allow emotions and experiences to be lodged in us because we avoid it or we're just powering through and this, that, and the other. But at some point, you have to face it. Yep. And I think that's a piece of when I brought it up, I said it, I felt casually. And it's not a casual experience. And I think there's pieces we can touch on depending on where this conversation goes that just to let people know, I mean, I know we said this, like you're not alone and you have other people, but just maybe to even look at if you have an experience that you personally responded to or managed in a certain way, knowing that you don't have to keep doing it that way. And to just really dig in, like, is there something else that needs to be, is it controlling me by me not talking about it or not sharing it with people, right? Because there's a level of shame that can go with, or embarrassment, or like that can go with why we don't, but we say it's because, well, that's not me and I'm stronger than that, so that's.
And I would just add that not only are you not alone, you don't have to deal with it alone, right? Like you're not alone and you don't have to go at it alone. You don't have to be alone in the journey. And it's important to communicate to your people, right? Whether it be significant others, spouses, parents, friends, priests, right? Like anyone that you have around you.
Therapists. Here's the challenging part with a lot of like rape, sexual assault, is it's people who are known within. So it's not typically, I would say, I don't know the percentage exactly. It's not a stranger. Yeah. And so that, I think that's really important to acknowledge as to why it isn't then shared with people close to you. One, you're going to have to see that person again. I went into a place of taking responsibility and saying, well, I could have done more. Like saying no repeatedly I could have gotten physical and I didn't, like I gave up. And I'm talking about I've had multiple situations. And so that part is like, I blame myself And so then I felt like I had no place to talk about it. And then it's like, well, all these people know this person, and well, what, like, it's probably just better to just keep it quiet.
Yeah. 59%. This is off of, it's like rain.org. It's the first thing that pulled up. 59% were acquaintances, 34% were family members, and only 7% are strangers. So again, that is a very brief, high level, literally just put it in the Google, looking at the very first thing that popped up. So Rain, RAINN.org. I'm not sure who this organization is, how accurate their information is, their data. But yeah, very first thing I pull up. So I believe, like, I've heard the same thing. So I believe that that's going to be correct, if not really close. So, but just to give context to everything you're talking about.
And so I would say, like, if it is something that you're not comfortable talking with someone you know about, talk to someone you don't know about it, right? I hope, and if you're worried of the repercussions of the other person, like, just do it for yourself. Like, you don't have to report anything, whatever, right? Like, do it so that you don't have to hold on to it. That person's not holding on to it. Maybe they are. I shouldn't say that. Yeah. I haven't been on the other end of it. So, they could be. I totally take that back. Yeah. I don't think that my perpetrators do. I don't think they saw they did anything wrong. So
again, we speak from our experiences and our lives, and all I can say is, right, like, you said something shit. What'd you say? You said
they don't have to hold on to it.
No, you said something, and
they aren't holding on to it.
Yeah, they it's not only they aren't holding on to it, but you said something like, they didn't think about the damage. The point I'm trying to make, anyways, they didn't, right? Like, you're saying that, like prosecuting or pressing charges or reporting, right? Like, you're worried about the impact on them. They're not worried about the impact on you. Right. So, and again, I can only speak from the way I was raised by a father who, like, I would never think of, right? Like, no means no in this situation. I have views on the no means no, right? But in this situation, and when it's sexual and it becomes consenting adults, no means no, absolutely. And that's the way I was raised. So to think of someone doing that, like, they are no longer thinking of you and the damage they are doing to you, and the shit that you are now going to have to deal with throughout your life, throughout however long it takes you to heal from this, for you 20 plus years. And I say, right, I can't make you do anything, right? But like, fuck yeah, report it. Fuck yeah, press charges. Like, it just tells you who they are. And yeah, maybe they have their own trauma that they're dealing with. Maybe they were sexually abused, or maybe they weren't raised by the father that I had. And, all these issues, but when you're no longer dealing with a consenting adult, that becomes a problem. And they weren't thinking of you, and it's not that you shouldn't be not thinking of them. You are thinking of them, and you're thinking of the damage that they did. And now that they got away with it, quote, got away with it, and how many other women have they had the opportunity to do this to, and because you didn't report it. And I'm not saying anything against you, Bre. right? Whether you did or didn't report it, and I don't know what you did, but right, there's a responsibility for us to talk to people, and as hard as it can be, and I have a family member who was living with me at a time when she was raped, and like I had got woken up in the middle of the night, and I had to deal with that, and she didn't take the action that I thought was appropriate to take, but I can't make her do anything, and all I could be there for was to support her. Mm-hmm. So I think it's important that while I believe that certain action should be taken and certain things should be done, I've also never been in the situation, and all we can do is be there to support our people, right, and not judge them for the actions they took or didn't take. And I think that's really important, is they're already going through enough, and now the people that they love and are supposed to be supportive of them, right now they have to worry about judgment from them. And I believe that's just doing more harm.
And I think there's a piece of like the not reporting piece, if anyone's interested in like, I guess a psyche type of perspective, is like, after something like that happens, you don't want to have to talk, like you don't want to have to talk about it, right? And especially not in a way that would be questioning your experience, right? And so I think there's a piece of that that falls short, because you're doing everything to just move on from it. Mm-hmm. And not that I'm saying that that's right, but like to be talking about it then in an environment that isn't supportive is, I think, is potentially what probably leads a lot of people not to. And again, I know it goes both ways. Like one gender is not, like, I'm not saying it doesn't go both ways. And I'm in the thick of like reading this book about kind of evolutionary biology. But there are certain tendencies of the way women handle things and men handle things. I mean, that's everything.
Absolutely.
From, again, we talked about this in the past, like how our brains work is we just have different approaches. And so I think there is a level of not wanting to ruffle feathers, not wanting, like, I think that is also plays a role as to, like, again, why I was like, well, I don't, like, I'm thinking about the other person, right? Like, but also part of me is thinking about myself. I was like, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to, like, you know, it's like when my wallet got stolen. I didn't want to file a police report. I didn't want to have to follow up and deal with that. Like, I know I'm not trying to minimize, compare the two, but, you know, it's, that plays a piece of it. It's like, I don't know. I'm done. I can't believe it happened. I don't want to believe it happened. I didn't believe, like, I told myself, again, it was my fault. Whatever, because I didn't want to be in the place where I was weak. Yeah. What I thought was weak.
So again, I'm with you, and anything I say going forward, right? Like, please, you and our listeners, don't take it as like, I don't believe you, or two, right? Like any of that. Like, I'm fully supportive of you, and you should, and I hope you know that. But like, do you think you not, like, because you said multiple occasions this has happened, do you think not reporting it, like, it left you weaker, and like in other situations and scenarios, like after the first time you didn't do anything, maybe like you realized the first time you didn't fight back, and then the second time you're like, oh well, and I don't know what you were thinking, and I'm just making shit up, but like, like, were you just like, oh yeah, no, this is just the way this has to be, or like, this, why didn't you fight back the second or third or however many times? Like, was it because you didn't take action because you just wanted to get over it, and now it's just like, oh well, let me just get through this next one? Like, what is there is there thoughts behind that, or?
Well, I'll speak to the third time, which was was the least, it was the most like physically aggressive, but the least, like I like got out of it, and that's why, like, and got in a cab, and it was when I was living in New York, and so that was still in a public place. And so part of that helped with the fact that I just.
So you were being assaulted, and you fought at whatever level. You fought, and you were able to get away from it. Yes, is that safe to say? Okay.
Yeah, it was like started in an indoor environment and then outside, and it continued. And I basically ran away and got a cab.
Got it. Okay.
And it's like, yeah, indoors it was starting to get physical, and I went out and it got more physical. And then I just was able, like, literally very lucky to have like a cab. And so, so there was a improvement. I don't know how you would say that.
I get what you're saying. We don't need to worry about the connotation.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about details of it.
Right.
But yeah, it's just, I can't really speak to why the second time I didn't get physical. I mean, here's the deal. As it's happening, I got physical, pushed them off, right?
Yep.
When I was like, what? No. Like, it was like, you vocalize, you get pushed down, held down. And then you do get to the point where you're like, this is like, what happened is I gave up saying resisting. And then I was like, absolutely not, like you go into, fight or flight, man, like fight, flight, or freeze. Like I went into just like give up mode, and then like something clicks in and it's like, push them off, unfortunately at that point, like damage is done, and so, and I think I will really want to address this because we both have been to Landmark and we've talked about it on here, and there's really incredible tools that they offered. And one thing they do a lot is like, they talk about like choosing what's happened to you, right? They say, like, if you can choose it, then like even stuff that you don't want, right? Then it's empowering. And I'm very much like wrapping it up in a short form. And so for me, that was not the healing piece, because I already took responsibility for it. I blame and I know taking responsibility and blaming yourself are two different things. My healing piece was being able to say, it's not my fault. Because I spent years saying, like, owning that.
Yeah, that it was your fault, that you were responsible.
That I chose, because I didn't do more. Because I didn't shove them off before something happened. I said, it's my fault. Like, I could have done more. And I think that's really important, is knowing, like, I never wanted to be a victim, so I got to choose it. But then I also created habituated patterns that didn't serve me from that. And so a fear of saying no and not being listened to led me into a pattern that was not healthy. And I think that, when you've been overstepped, when you speak your truth, your voice, and it gets trampled enough times, you just go with whatever. Like, and I think that's been really important for me, like, as an underlying, of, everyone's, oh, go with the flow. Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, like
yes.
a lot of that is a defense mechanism.
Yep.
Because you potentially have spoken your truth and not been listened to, or not been valued, or not been considered. Mm-hmm. And so also on the other side of communication, being aware of when you are doing that to someone.
Yeah.
Are you truly considering it, even if you don't end up going that direction? But like, where do you trample someone else's truth?
Yeah, or just push them down, or not consider what they're saying.
Or where are you with someone who just always goes with the flow? Can you encourage them to speak their truth?
Right.
Because maybe that's their defense mechanism. They're afraid to even have an opinion, voice it, or stand up for themselves, or advocate for themselves, because they're afraid of they don't want that feeling of being trampled. So you have someone in your life who doesn't speak up. Can you ask them their needs, what they need? Can you bring that forth in them?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I do want to touch on something else, but just want to make sure that we've said sort of what we're going to say there. I want same topic, but I just want to move a little bit off of it. Okay. We mentioned, I feel like you were like getting there, but I don't think you ever actually said it, is right. I think, and again, we'd have to look this up, but I think more often with like reporting, you're going to see it be women, right, who are sexually assaulted. Again, just an assumption, but I think it happens to both, right, men and women, and you see it a lot, and maybe this is different, but like you see it a lot with underage people, with especially like we've seen a lot of it sadly with the Catholic Church, and being molested. I mean, in my mind, being molested, sexually assaulted, it's all the same thing. Just now it's on a minor. And I think the way men process things are different. But I think even though it's different, it's still the same, right? Because you're saying like, oh, you didn't share, you didn't tell anyone. And how many men are now coming forward, right? Because they're healing and they're working through it. And again, like that number is really high, 34% of being a family member. So I think as much as this applies to women, it also applies to men. And again, I can't say that, right? I've never been sexually assaulted or anything like that. So, but I just want to put it out there that this isn't just women, and for men who think, oh, I'm tough, I'm a man, and yeah, you're still tough, you're still a man, right? Right? Just because this happened to you doesn't mean that you're not any of those things, and you still need to heal from it.
Yeah, and I feel like I kind of mentioned, like I was, not speaking clearly, but I 100% acknowledge that it happens to both genders. And what's very interesting is, I would say I took the quote unquote man route for dealing with it.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of my continued, and I know it's not just any sex can adopt certain ways of being, right? But I took the like masculine or a man approach, and that's part of when I've talked about regaining the feminine, right? Is because it went everything. It was like, well, they can just, because my experience was with a man and not a woman. I was like, well, if they can just power through and like not consider feelings or emotions or anything like that.
Yep. And
fine, then that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to just power through, toughen up, suck it up. You know, and so I 100% acknowledge like that men probably hold this in themselves far more than females potentially.
Especially on the shame aspect, I think men are probably way more feeling, and again, it's not a comparison, but I feel like men are going to be in that more shameful bucket of, right, like, oh, this shouldn't have happened to me type of thing. Yeah, it's
but then there's the shame that makes women not say anything because they're told you asked for it.
Yeah.
So and, yes, just shame in general,
right,
needs to go.
Yeah, 100%.
Shaming and feeling shame, just get rid of it all.
Yeah. Shit, I had two thoughts. I have one that's gonna probably be a little controversial, and it's not right. I'm not victim blaming here, and at all, right? Like you didn't ask for it. I'm not saying that you did. But what I will say is, it's really important to be aware of your situations that you put yourself in. And I'm not saying that, and I'm not talking about you in your situation, Bre, and I'm not talking about anyone in their specific situation. It's just important to understand the situations that you put yourself in and where you are and what you're doing and who you're with. Because if there's a way to identify the problem before it becomes a problem and get yourself out of the situation, I think that is the best approach that we can take. And not everything is avoidable. And we're not fortune tellers, and we're not going to see everything coming. And again, you didn't ask for it, right? Like I can't stress that enough. Oh, that was the other thing, and it leads into this is in this situation, I already said it, no means no, and that doesn't matter at what point of the process you are in, right? If you are in a intimate relationship with someone, and you're doing whatever it is that you're doing with them, and then all of a sudden it becomes a no, it's no longer okay, right? That no means no in that moment, right? So that's where you need to, right, like whether male or female committing the act, right, like that's where no means no, like that needs to stop. And maybe you're in like a longer relationship, like you hear of marital rape, and right, you know, it's important to acknowledge what that person's feeling and what that person's going through. So I addressed two things there, but right, like be aware of your situations. If you know, and again, I'm not comparing, but when you if you're walking down the street, it's 2:00 in the morning, and your options are the well-lit street or the dark alley, right? Like take the well-lit street, right? I'm not saying, right, if you have to take the dark alley and you get mugged in that dark alley, I'm not saying that you asked to be mugged, but it is a dark alley, and you know, there's potential danger in that dark alley. The same potential danger could be on the well-lit street, but right, like you need to assess, right? That's part of the fight or flight is these unconscious or conscious biases that we have developed to protect us, right? To say, oh yeah, you know, that is a pretty dark alley, and you know what? I see a silhouette down that dark alley. I'm probably going to take the safer, quote, safer route.
And this kind of actually was beautifully circling back to what we started with, even with Thich Nhat Hanh, is that we're actually so disconnected from ourselves that we can't even sense our intuition about things, or we've been told our intuition is BS. I think there's a lot of
or in today's age, we're told not to feel a certain way about our biases, like that a bias is wrong.
Biases can protect us. Right. And I'm not saying that's just, it's a feeling, right? So if someone makes you like you feel uncomfortable around someone, it's okay to, you don't need to go stand in a elevator in a parking lot with them. Okay.
Yes.
Like that's fine.
Yep.
Like if you have a feeling, and I just encourage you to just be in touch with those feelings and not be like, you're being crazy, that's out of line. Yeah, just be in tune with it. Be in tune with we have these receptors, right? And that's the physiological sensations that arise. And they should be considered. Yes. I think I don't take what you're saying as I put myself in this situation, but it is 100% like we can make choices before that will set us up better. And I will say, like, that is what so that's what put me into that state of like, I shouldn't even have been in a room alone with that person.
Right.
And it's friends or a friend of a friend, and you just, and so here's the deal. You do your best, right?
100%.
And you also can't like live in that fear. It's complicated, but I think there's some straight up things of, if you've got a lit alleyway and a dark one,
choose the lighter one.
Hey,
it's likely going to work in your favor.
Put your keys.
Right. And we're talking about stuff, and we might be going down the rabbit hole, right? Like the whole key thing and being a woman thing, and it's not that because you're right, like you're a woman. Yeah, you're a woman, and you do have to worry about these things. It's and period. But like you do. And people say, well, we need to raise our men better. I don't disagree with that. But you also need to be aware. And just because the blame, quote, the blame is on the man, it's also your responsibility to keep yourself safe. And yes, men, I don't think all men are bad. I don't think most men are bad, actually. And vice versa, right? I think that, sadly, we find the bad apples. But women, you're right. We talked about this in our superpower episode. You are smaller. You're weaker.
Yes.
You are more vulnerable, right? Men are more overpowering. They're taller. They're bigger. And, like you need to prepare for that in life, right? And I'm not saying that you should be prepared to be sexually assaulted or anything. It's just, you should be aware that, yes, if a man wants to hold you down, it's likely they're going to.
Yeah.
Right? And that's not your fault. But you should have the knowledge. Like, if it happens, you shouldn't be like, that man, he's an asshole.
Yeah.
But, right, like, there's also...
Kick him in the nuts.
Right.
I'm sorry, but it's like, right? Like, I was too nice.
Right.
Like, at the end of the day, yes, right?
100%,
like
100%.
I had things I could have done, like, and we're not going into that, but it's
no. And again, that doesn't mean that what he did isn't right. Like, you acknowledging that you were too nice and that there were other things you could have done, that doesn't give him the pass. No one's saying what he did was okay or right. Right? Right, because I feel like I'm gonna get hate for this, especially as a male. Right? It's just, he's still a dick. He's still an asshole. And yes, you still should have done more. And you didn't. And right, that doesn't change what happened. Right? But as a female, you should be prepared to fight back, and you should be prepared to take action, and no one can tell you how to handle the situation when you're in the moment either. Right? Again, fight, flight, or freeze, and maybe at that time that was the best you could do. Right? It's always easy to look back, especially on yourself, to, I should have done this. Yeah, you should have, but you didn't.
Yeah.
And in that moment, maybe that was the best. Maybe that was all that you had in the moment. It's very easy to look. When I have a friend, he says hindsight's bullshit, right? Because everyone says, "Oh, hindsight's 20/20." No, hindsight's bullshit. You can't go back and you can't fix it. You can't do the thing, right? So, while it's important not to, right, everything that you had said prior to this is, right, like you were at fault for. No, you weren't. You weren't at fault for it. Are there maybe things you could have done better? Sure, but you didn't. The guy's still a dick. The guy's still at fault. When you said no, that should have been the end of it. And that applies to any situation. And it's our job. I've said this in other episodes. No one's coming to save you. And that applies to everything. Right? It is your responsibility, your job, to ensure that you and your family are protected.
I want to touch on just one small thing.
Yeah, good.
Because we're referencing a lot of more adult, or yeah.
Yes. Yep.
I know we have some parents who are listeners, and I won't speak to this because I don't have personal experience, but a really great podcast I listened to with Iris Gardner. She's been on Jocko's podcast, and she talks about her childhood sexual abuse trauma, and she references some stuff just in parenting, and I think it's really significant, even if you aren't a parent, that you have, if you have nieces and nephews, right? You can be a resource for them to come to if something is happening that shouldn't be happening.
Yes.
And so I won't even go into it, but please, if this is, I would just highly recommend listening to it, because parents have opportunities also to teach their children for when they become adults on how to handle those situations as well. So not even just as children potentially being sexually abused, but how they can handle certain situations as they get older. And if that's established younger, and I think it's taboo topic. It's like, you don't want to bring that up, but all of a sudden at 17, I'm facing this situation, and I don't blame my parents at all. My dad used to teach us self-defense, like, but so we did like the flick. I can't remember. It was like flick, ear pop, elbow. Like he did that because I'm sure he had something and, thought about me as a female. Okay. This, that, and the other. But, so I don't want that to fall on them by any means, but, I think we just have opportunities to not only raise better men, but also how can we support women who are physically weaker, or children who are physically weaker, to set them up for success, I guess I would say. So
yeah, agreed.
My healing piece that was missing was one, and I don't like to talk personal where it's about someone else, right?
Yep.
But my healing piece was talking about it, being not vocal. It doesn't have to, this is a bigger platform, right? That was not my intention. My healing was like talking to people in my training, sharing these things that I didn't share with people, and then still being loved, not judged afterwards. So whether that's on a platform like this where I don't interact with the people who in real time, it's sharing with my parents, not so that they have to carry it or feel bad or anything, but really because I didn't let them be parents at the time. And then so people who are close to me, and I do, it was something maybe the podcast pushed me. I knew I needed to have those conversations. And so maybe there is like something the universe was like plotting for me, and why I like just word vomited it on here, because I was like, oh crap, that means I really do have to have these conversations with important people in my life.
Right.
Because it's really easy to push it off. I'm like, I know that's the piece I need. That's the piece that I have to take care of, but I'm like pushing it back. And now I just told the whole world. So I'm going to have that conversation.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And you talked to your mother and father?
Yeah, I shared it with them.
Okay.
So, and I think, again, it's for anyone out there, it's never too late.
No.
Right?
It isn't.
And,
never.
I really I made it very clear that it's not for them, again, not for them to carry, not for them to feel like they did anything wrong or they weren't good parents.
Didn't do their job or.
No. It's nothing that they did. It was my own construed, subconscious belief that I had to handle it the way that I did. But that's not an isolated incident, right? And the way I handled that is the way I handled every situation in my life for a very long time. And so this is for everyone to look at themselves, whether you've had a big T trauma or anything that we're talking about or not. Look at your habituated pattern of how you handle triggers or stressful situations or things that you wish didn't happen. Look at that.
Yeah.
And you'll see that it's pretty similar time after time after time. Then ask yourself, does that serve you?
How you do anything is how you do everything. It applies literally to everything.
And sometimes we need to do things for survival. I want to acknowledge that. Sometimes in the moment, that's how you have to do it.
Yes.
And that's okay.
Yep. It doesn't change who you are or doesn't take away from you. I agree with that. And this, again, not comparison, but just giving an example. In the military, they've actually changed interrogation. Like, you're allowed to say and give whatever it is to survive.
Wow.
Like, yeah. So, like, that's, yeah, and I don't know at what level, right? Like, with nuclear codes and shit like that. But, yeah, like, they tell you, it used to be you don't say shit, right? And they realized, like, survive, because they realized people are going to do it anyway. Right? And that's why a lot of interrogation tactics don't work, especially like hurting people, is because people are just going to, right, like, make shit up.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're just trying to survive. So that's why we get in trouble for using terrible interrogation tactics. But yeah, like, sometimes you do. You're right. You just have to survive. How you doing?
Good.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was important to revisit it a little more intentionally.
Yeah. And I think as someone who's never been through it, and like, we're not going to get it right. And all of us, we're not going to get it right, but sometimes you just don't know what to say. And sometimes silence is okay, and sometimes coming back to it, and like we did before we started recording, and then we did it on the hot mics, right? It's sometimes we just don't know what to do, and we don't know, right? Like, we've never been through it, and right, we're all going through this together, and this is new for some of us and not new for all of us, and each person is different in how they handle it. So just give yourself that grace. Like, I don't think I'm a terrible friend for not acknowledging this when we recorded the last episode, but now, like, I believe it wasn't right, and now we're fixing that, and like, that's the thing. That's the beautiful thing, is we can go forward.
And I didn't feel your response was insensitive. So it wasn't like I came, just background, I wasn't like, oh, I can't believe it. I just kind of was like, wow, we just like talked about it and then talked about Yoga Alliance. Like, what the heck?
Yeah, it was very casual.
Because then in my head as a listener, right, like, that doesn't feel that, if I don't know, if I was a listener who had maybe been through something similar, that might not bode well. So I just really wanted to touch on it and And for people who haven't been through it and have someone who come to them, like all you need to do is listen.
Yep.
Right? I didn't want to be a victim. I don't want a pity party. That I'm not sharing this now to have a pity party. I'm just sharing it to know that people know they can heal whatever it is they're carrying it, and you might be carrying it when you're avoiding it. That's all. That's like one phrase. There we go.
Yeah.
So just listen.
Absolutely.
Just be there.
And that's part of empathy, is we want to, help others remove their pain, and that's not what empathy is. Empathy isn't removing someone else's pain. Right? It's acknowledging that they have their pain, and acknowledging that you're there to support them through their pain. Right? Like, it's not even right to rob them of their pain and their feelings and their thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important that sometimes you just listen. Sometimes you say stupid shit, and sometimes you say the right things, and everything in between.
Mm-hmm.
So, journal prompt.
Yeah.
So grab your journals and first off, right, maybe the breath of this episode just like got you feeling some way, right? Like maybe your home's a fucking mess and you want to write about that. That's cool, write about that. And, maybe you were sexually assaulted, sexually abused, molested, whatever words you use. And maybe you've healed from it or not. And not even sexually, right? Just assaulted or abused. Because I think all of that falls into this, right? It's big T trauma that has happened, that has shaped the way that you now process things, as Bre said. So maybe it's just time to write about it. Maybe you've talked about it before or not, and now is the time to heal from it. Or there could be people in your life that have been assaulted as well, and you didn't show up how you believe you showed up. And sometimes it's just as simple as acknowledging that, right? It's not that you're a bad person for that. It's just acknowledging, hey, and I did it on air, right? Hey, I don't feel I should, right? Bre doesn't feel like I did anything wrong, but like, hey, I don't feel like I showed up the way I should have. And I'm here now showing up the way that I feel like I should, and I'm here to support you in any way that I can. So maybe you're right about that, and yeah. I don't know. Anything you want to add to that?
I think, just all that, like getting in touch with home, and that sometimes looks like seeing those ways that we deal with the hard stuff, and just seeing it,
mm-hmm.
and then saying, okay, is that serving me? If it served me at the time, great, but is it serving me now? Is that who I want to be? And if it's not, then knowing that you have the power to change that. And it's not easy, and it takes repetition because you've probably been doing it for decades.
Mm-hmm. And it's not too late.
Mm-hmm.
You said that before, but say it again. It's not too late, and just because you've been doing it for years doesn't mean you need to keep doing it.
Mm-hmm. When you stop, it's freeing.
Well, it was a pleasure chatting with you about this, and again, I do want to acknowledge that your courage and for sharing, and if you help one person in sharing your story, I believe that's a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. And whether it be again a person who has dealt with it themselves or family members, thank you for that, and thank you for being you. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. And feel free to reach out. I'm not really on Instagram right now, so email us.
All right, Bre. It was good catching up.
Yeah.
Chat soon.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
If you want to follow us and our adventures, you can find both of us on Instagram. I'm at Bre Allison. That's BreAllison.
And I am at The Life of Alan Tatone, underscores between each word. To check out our offerings, yoga, one-on-one trainings, workshops, retreats, and a recorded library, you can find the info on our website, thehunterandthehippie.com.
If you have questions for the podcast, about the podcast, feedback, suggestions, or just want to say hi, or find ways to work with us, our email is thehunterandthehippie@gmail.com. And don't worry, all of this will be in our show notes.
Thanks for tuning in.
Hopefully you weren't tuned out.
To the Hunter and the Hippie podcast.